Hello and welcome to This Week in Laker Football, your weekly exclusive look into the West Bloomfield Lakers varsity football team on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. I'm Tyler Kieft, alongside West Bloomfield Lakers head coach Zach Hilbers, coming off another playoff victory, this time on the road in Utica, 24-6 over the Eagles last week. And that was the game that started off very much with the momentum swinging toward the Eagles, and then your team answered back through some early adversity with the wind and with the conditions and with the play of Utica, and was able to even that game out very quickly. Take us through those early game adjustments and how you ultimately were able to even things out against those Eagles.
I guess it was kind of similar to round one, not week one, but round one against Rochester Adams, where they took a early touchdown lead on us, and we kind of, it's like the boxing analogy. You kind of took a first punch, you're kind of wavering a little bit, but we kind of, buckled down, like trusted our stuff, and, just kind of stuck to it. And our guys really responded. They did a good job of rising to the occasion, matching their physicality, and, last week in the third quarter, we had some big special teams plays and defensive plays that kind of, gave us a lead.
And we talked about this last week as we were preparing for this game. We talked about the preparation for this game, that your team and Utica Eisenhower very similarly built, very even matchup. And we did see that kind of play out throughout much of the first half, back and forth, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. But the conditions were interesting, too, because it was so windy out there. It was tough to get your passing game going, whether you were going with the wind or into the wind. How much of a factor did the weather play, especially early on, in kind of modifying your game plan?
I don't know if it really affected our game plan too much or modified it, just because, it is what it is. It's the same for both teams. It's playoff football in Michigan. So if you've been around like we have, and, Coach Smith and Eisenhower has, the deal is, but a lot of it, I think more so had to do with, like you said, it was just being two really good defenses, and good offenses usually look sloppier against good defenses. So both sides of the ball, they were physical, they could cover, and they just, they do a really good job with their stuff. So nothing's going to come as easy, and I think that had a lot to do with it.
This team's so physical, and their defensive front is so big. It's something we also talked about last week, that you knew the passing game was going to have to be a bigger factor in this week's matchup, and certainly started to pick up toward the end of the half. We saw some connections between Rick Nance and Elijah Durham, and overall throughout the game, over 200 yards passing. What was the difference maker this week, particularly in the passing game, to be able to finally get past a really tough secondary in Utica Eisenhower and move the football?
Well, we thought we had to have balance, and we kind of found that balance between the run and the pass. We didn't run for as many, yards per carry as we normally do, but again, that's because of their defensive front and their physicality. But we knew that if we did that and we had balance and we mixed it up with our guys, our power guys, our speed guys, that we'd have opportunities. And luckily enough, when it came time to make plays, our guys stepped up and made them.
Toward the end of the half, a very quick end to that half, moving the football up the field, and then some miscommunication or maybe even controversy at the end of that half with a final timeout attempting to be called with under 5 seconds left. Josh Tate gets a pass inside the 5 and sets up a potential scoring play at the very least, and attempted a field goal to get some points on the board before halftime. Take us through that moment from your side as a coach involved in that. What was going on the sideline in between yourself and the officiating crew, trying to get that timeout called with a few seconds remaining?
Yeah, we were going to go out there and kick a field goal with after the timeout and just try to take a 9-6 lead into halftime. The explanation that was given to me was that my signal for timeout looked like a play call, and that caused confusion. And then when the clock ran out, there was nothing they could do to go back and reverse that. And that was, I guess, frustrating. But that's one of those things that once it happens, there's nothing you're going to do to change it, and you have to best, walk away and remove yourself from it and make sure everybody's on the same page going into the second half. Actually, I waited 5 or 10 minutes before I even talked to the kids at halftime. I wanted to make sure, it was not fresh in their minds, didn't want it in their heads, just get everybody refocused. None of that stuff matters anymore. We're tied at half. In a lot of ways, we think we outplayed them. But it's our job to go out and do that in the second half, because we're not going to make any excuses for anything that happened, because the third quarter hasn't happened yet and the fourth quarter hasn't happened yet, and we can still control how we play. So that was kind of our message, and I'm really glad and thankful that the kids responded to that and had a really good third quarter.
Dave Scott and I had a chance to talk to Coach Bingham and some of the other assistants after the game on our way out. from Swinehart Field, and asked them about what that halftime environment was like in the locker room, what the speeches were like, what the discussion was like. And they said it themselves, it didn't really take a lot of motivating to get the players fired up for half number 2. So what changed in that second half where it became really all Lakers from the jump?
Well, I guess, we had 3 drives if you count the one right before half, where we got down to their 15-yard line in the first half and we didn't score. Okay, so the difference is we kind of finished some things, and it started off with a defensive touchdown. Jaden Allos got another one for us, which is, he's just been making plays every week. And we just finished drives. Special teams stepped up, made huge plays on the 2 kickoffs, and punt team pinned them back inside the 10-yard line. Our punt return game was great, and, it was really just rising to the occasion and making plays when we needed to. And when we got to the fourth quarter, our goal was like, look, we've shut their offense down so far for the most part, but they got a great quarterback, they got great receivers, and they can't come back if they don't have the ball. So we slowed it down our tempo a little bit and just made sure that they didn't have a chance. And, luckily for us, it worked this week.
Yeah, your secondary was lethal from the jump in that game. Jaden Allos with 2 interceptions, including a pick 6. He had some really nice physical plays in coverage by Jameer Benjamin and Nigel Dunton and so many others throughout that game. And we saw the versatility, too, of this team come into play in that game. Jaden Allos, typically a wide receiver, plays some punter and has played safety and defensive back over the past several weeks. And then Nigel Dunton making big plays throughout the game, both offensively and defensively. How much of a factor does that versatility play in your ability to game plan week in and week out against a variety of different opponents?
No, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what it gives us. We got a bunch of kids that are like Swiss Army knives that we can kind of play all over, and it allows you to kind of mold your defense to really just try to stop the other team that's lined up across from you. So whether they're run heavy, pass heavy, we have to be able to adjust and adapt our fronts and how we're going to attack them. And kids like that you mentioned, and Darian Hicks, who's played safety and he's played outside backer, Will Espy, who's played all over on the defense. Will is a sophomore, started off at corner. We had injuries, played outside backer, played safety against Lake Orion. He's been all over too. And those kids have done a really good job of allowing us, again, versatility and just keeping our guys out there, but confusing the offense with what we're doing.
The Lakers taking on the Clarkston Wolves on Friday night in the regional final. That game will be at West Bloomfield High School. 7 o'clock kickoff. Our coverage will begin at about 6:30. TV and radio at WBTV on the West Bloomfield School District's channel, Comcast 19 and AT&T 99 on the radio, of course, on 89.3 Lakes FM. And Coach, last week the big thought outside of your game was the matchup between Lake Orion and Clarkston had its own exciting finish to that. How did you guys keep track of that, and what was the first thoughts initially when you heard it was going to be Clarkston on this week Friday?
Well, I guess I didn't have any idea what the score was until about under a minute left in our game, when we felt comfortable, hey, we got this. I turned around to somebody wait, what's the score out there? And someone said, Lake Orion's up by 5. I'm like, oh, okay, that's closer than I would have thought, but it's a big rivalry game. You never know what's going to happen. They play a team a second time, and Clarkston Lake Orion's it's storied. You know what I mean? And then I was talking to the team, and AD came up and whispered to me how that game ended, and I told the kids hey, you got one more home game, and we started the year off thinking we were going to have 3. And we kind of got a surprise extra run with Oak Park, and then now 2 more in the playoffs, and we'll take it. Either way, it's a rematch against a team that beat us. Clarkston and Lake Orion had both beaten us, so we know that either way, that's how we were going to take it. We had a chance at, revenge and fixing some past mistakes. So we're just glad that it's here at our place.
We'll get back in just a few minutes and talk about that Clarkston matchup with Coach Hilbers, a 36-44 loss for the Lakers back in Week 6. Now they get a chance to go back up against those same Wolves at home on Friday night. Again, our coverage will begin at 6:30 with This Week in Laker Football, Laker pregame show after that, and all of our coverage, WBTV on Comcast Channel 19, AT&T Channel 99, and on the radio on 89.3 Lakes FM. This Week in Laker Football returns next on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Second down, handoff is faked, it's intercepted! Nothing but space! Nothing but points! Touchdown, WB!
Big pick 6 for Jaden Allos. I think I got it, if I got it right.
You did. That is 2 pick 6s in 2 weeks of playoff action in his first 2 starts.
This is Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. On cable and the radio. On the web too, and on social media. Civic Center TV, television that's close to home.
Looking for a score, a schedule, a story? MHSAA.com has you covered. Our newly redesigned website has everything you need to follow high school sports in Michigan. And it's optimized for mobile use. Fans can submit scores on a Friday night, check playoff pairings and game times, or read about the student athletes from your community. Your first stop is MHSAA.com. Connect with us online and get everything you need all in one place.
Take a break and tune in to the Splash Live on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Join Tyler Keefe and Diane Chabon as they go through headlines, events, and update you on the day-to-day in Oakland County. Catch us live Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Watch us on demand at civiccentertv.com. Or watch us on TV at Comcast Channel 15 or AT&T at Channel 99.
Welcome back to This Week in Laker Football, your weekly exclusive look into the West Bloomfield Lakers varsity football team on Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside head coach Zach Hilbers, coming off a big win in the second week of the playoffs in a district championship game against Utica Eisenhower. Now you get to come home, a little bit of a surprise for the regional final, going up against another OAA Red Division team that you've seen already this season in the Clarkston Wolves. The difference here is that not only did you play Clarkston on the road in Week 6. You had lost to Clarkston, one of just the two teams to beat the Lakers so far this season. And we kind of had this discussion a few weeks back before the first week of the playoffs with Rochester Adams. It's a different dynamic preparing for a team that you've seen before and a team that's seen you before. In this case, preparing for a team that had beaten you, but a team that you had a bit of a comeback or quite close to a completion comeback at the end of that game. How does that modify how you approach game planning this time around, knowing some of those weaknesses that you had exposed in your game against Clarkston?
Well, I guess the easy thing to say is that, we're playing a lot better than we were in Week 6. But, from watching their last couple of games, I think they are too. They might have had like a few off weeks toward the end of the year where they lost a couple of games. But, watching their playoff games, they're playing really good. Their studs are out there playing like studs and making big plays. And it's going to be a challenge because, they're playing confident. And, our challenge is that, we got a team that, beats you, and, you think that if we fix our stuff, we get them at home, hopefully, it's going to be a different outcome for us. But, really it's about us just doing the job and making sure that we're on top of our stuff.
They played a really gritty game last week against Lake Orion. The adversity going against them in the second half, a pick six that expanded Lake Orion's lead. And they fought all the way back to, in the last 90 seconds, they're down 5 points. They get into the end zone, and then they come up with a big defensive stop to ultimately defeat Lake Orion, an undefeated team, the OAA Red Division champions, on their home field. How does that speak to the way that Clarkston is built as a program and their reputation as a program, and how do you approach that, knowing that's the mentality of that Wolves program, and those players definitely embrace that?
I mean, yeah, you're right. It's Clarkston football. They're always going to be tough to beat, and you make it this time of year, it's even going to be harder. And Lake Orion played them a second time. We're playing them a second time. It does not get any easier. I think they got some new wrinkles in their offense, just ways to get their best players to football, and it's been working. And it's our job and our challenge to try to stop that from happening, because our path to victory is slowing down their two studs on offense. And it's easier said than done because they both made huge plays in the fourth quarter last week.
And we talked about this with other quarterbacks going back a few weeks, Rochester Adams, and even talking about Preston Crum as a 4-year starter in his development. Brady Collins has been playing excellent football in the past few weeks, and you mentioned getting his weapons involved. Brody Kosen last week was an absolute killer on the football field against the Lake Orion Dragons, and he had a great game earlier on in the season. That's an interesting matchup there too, because he's a big player. He's an athletic guy. He's great at moving the football after the catch. But you got good matchups against that at all three levels, too. How do you approach game planning for someone that's that much of a focal point for a team's offense, without forgetting that other Jimmys and Joes out there that are equally as talented and can make big plays themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the two guys, I guess, between Cozen and Desmond Stevens, but they got other guys like the quarterback you said is playing really well, and number 8's been making some plays, and both their running backs played really well against us. I think they're brothers. They played really well against us too. So they got multiple guys that can hurt you. But when it came down to the fourth quarter of the last game, and then even their game against Romeo round 1, it was really their guys, their studs, I thought, that went out there and made it like an impactful difference in the game. So it's our job to try to slow them down, shut them down, and which is difficult because they move those two all over the field, use them in a variety of ways, and you can just tell like they're smart football players because of the number of things that they can do out there and the places they put them. They move them all over the place. There's not a lot of patterns or keys to it. You just have to line up and don't let them beat you.
A lot of penalties last week for the Lakers coming off of the first game of the playoffs against Rochester Adams, where there was 1 on the offensive side in total, which was the fewest of the season. At this time of the year, how much more important is it to play as clean of a game as possible as you get closer and closer to that state championship game?
Oh, it's definitely important. It's huge. It was a large reason why we didn't get some scores early in the game when we thought we were moving the ball okay. You get into a close game in the playoffs, that can be the difference right there. So we definitely have to be a little bit cleaner on that. Penalties did get in our way, and you never know when that's going to come up and bite you. So, yeah, that's definitely a point of emphasis for the next couple of days for us.
Leadership becomes really important to this time of the year. Having that senior leadership that's had championship experience or near championship experience throughout their careers. How does that also help benefit your coaching staff in preparation for these games, especially as we get closer and closer to the pinnacle?
Yeah, you're right. You lean really heavily on your seniors, and we got a lot of them that are out there in the field that don't want their careers to end. And a lot of times in the playoffs, you're gonna win and lose with those guys. And we're lucky to have a great senior leadership, and we're gonna lean on them, and we're gonna rely on them to hopefully, we take it 1 week at a time. I'll say get us 1 more week. Hopefully it's 3 more weeks. But hey, like we were telling the kids the other day, we're practicing after daylight savings. The lights are on during practice. This is the best. So let's just keep that going.
1 trophy during the postseason is nice, but you're looking for 3, the district, the regional, and, of course, the state championship. Coach, thank you very much.
Yeah, you got it.
Lakers taking on the Clarkston Wolves. Home game for the regional final at the Swamp Friday at 7 o'clock. Our coverage will begin at about 6:30 on WBTV, Comcast Channel 19, and AT&T Channel 99. You can also find us on the radio on 89.3 Lakes FM. For the entire team at the West Bloomfield High School Athletics Department and our team at Civic Center TV, I'm Tyler Keefe. Thanking you for tuning in to This Week in Laker Football.